I remember where I was 51 years ago when this took place. I can't believe the odds were only 8-1, but this is the 51st anniversary, Miami Beach Convention Center, 1964. I wasn't in Miami at the time. I was a kid growing up in New York. One of my favorite television programs was the Gillette Fight of the Week. We used to see a lot of Cassius Clay, brash young man, wasn't quite the iconic international figure he would eventually become. Wasn't the heavyweight champion at the time. There were some questionable decisions there on his rise to the top. And he took on Sonny Liston at the Miami Beach Convention Center. 8-1 underdog, wins the fight. There were always suspicions. I mean, to this day, there are still suspicions that maybe everything wasn't quite on the level. But confirmed later on that Sonny, I think he was out playing golf that afternoon. That's how lightly he had taken Cassius Clay, who became Muhammad Ali the next day in terms of changing his name. But he was taking him so lightly. He's playing golf in the afternoon, hurts his shoulder supposedly, and he had a legitimate shoulder injury. They found out after the fight, and then we all remember that little trickle of blood, kind of like that Y.A. Tittle picture going all the way back. I think it was the 1960 NFL championship game between the Giants and the Bears. And the ultimate depiction of the despair that the Giants and their fans were feeling was seeing Y.A. Tittle on the ground, on his knees, and a trickle of blood coming from the side of his helmet. And you thought, yeah, that is the epitome, the characterization of a loss that is particularly painful. And we saw that with Sonny Liston. But Troy West joins us here. You're too young to remember this. It was a giant. If Cassius Clay loses that fight, I don't know what the hell happens after that. I don't know that he would have been able to demonstrate his overall greatness and superiority and become the figure that he eventually did. But nobody in their right mind gave him a chance. Here's this guy that looked like he couldn't break an egg with either hand in terms of heavyweight power, going against a guy who had spent 5 years in prison knocking out guards before the mob got a hold of him and had just been annihilating people, including the great Floyd Patterson. One-shot knockouts, and nobody gave Ali even a prayer of winning that fight. That should have been 80-1. That should have been Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson type of odds, but 8-1, very conservative back then, and I hope you had it because I certainly didn't see that coming. But it was 51 years ago today. We welcome Troy West into the program. Troy, how are you? Well, we had, I think, a somewhat monumental occasion on Bury Your Bookie yesterday with Scotty M. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing good. Yesterday was an interesting day. It wasn't our best day, but it closed out nicely. I think the game that, personally, to me, would have been the game of the year. Gonzaga -5 ends up taking down Santa Clara. That would have ended at about 3 a.m. your time. That was an
Yeah.
8:15 tip off out here on the West Coast. But Gonzaga, who I've told you, I think they're turning the corner. They take care of Santa Clara by 20 last night.
You love the Zags, man. I love that about you. You're loyal to your local teams there coming from Seattle, Washington. If you are betting games, though, people, Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for all of your action in 2025. And hopefully you're diving in with both fists and betting your entire bankroll every night. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online, your ultimate game day companion. They have the largest selection of odds from the NBA, college basketball, UFC. You can bet on all of those fights. I know Troy does a lot of handicapping on that on his service. The NHL, which we hit on yesterday with Scotty M. From every three-pointer to hat trick, Bet Online has you covered with the odds and more for every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. So I was teasing Scotty M about the O-line yesterday. I don't know how heavily you get involved with NHL action. I'm not sure how predictable it is in your opinion, but it was the old joke about a guy that calls his bookie. He's lost 20 games in a row. He's meeting them in the graveyard every Tuesday to pay off. And the bookie, having like the smallest amount of empathy and sympathy, he's tired of taking this guy's money. He says, maybe you ought to get off betting football and try something else like the NHL. So he's looking at a guy who just lost 20 straight bets, and the guy looks back at him in all sincerity and says, NHL, what the fuck do I know about hockey? And you're thinking, well, you don't know much about anything else. So you might give it a crack. And Scotty M hits with the Lightning last night against a slumping, fading Edmonton team, now tagged with their fourth consecutive loss, and has the Lightning in a breeze, winning at 4-1. How's your resources when it comes to NHL input? Do you get involved in that a lot, Trey West, on your service?
Well, absolutely. And what's funny is, sources to remain anonymous. But yesterday, we're chatting a bit, and a radio guy out here who covers the team very well, and a guy goes, "Man, the Kraken, they're playing a little bit better. They're on the road against St. Louis." What do you think? The guy goes, I think I'm going to go up to the betting window and take the Kraken. And the radio show host guy, a very similar guy to you, he looks at him and goes, don't do it. And he goes, what do you mean don't do it? He goes, just don't do it. I know some stuff going on in that locker room. Don't do it.
Oh, wow.
And sure as shit, it was 6-0 at the end of the first period, or period and a half into the game. It was 6-0. This was an even money game. This was the Kraken minus 110 at the Blues. I think the final score was 7-2.
Oh,
So no, we cover hockey. That was just a funny story. I thought that was interesting because when some of these teams are reeling, like you said, Edmonton, other teams in the league, when man, it's like when you can fade them, right? When these teams are reeling like this, fade them until they can get the ship turned around. Because boy, that was ugly last night. I'll tell you what.
yeah, the Kraken looked so good. They played the first game after that international Four Nations thing, which was such a wild success for the National Hockey League, an all-star game that normally nobody paid attention to during that period. For 2 weeks, the NHL is the sole focus of a lot of people's attention, including presidents of different countries. So it certainly accomplished its goal of taking what was an otherwise ignored event and turning it into something that they could use as a springboard for a giant marketing platform. But Kraken came out and beat the Panthers, who have won their 2 games since, 2-1 here on the road. And so there was some evidence maybe that they were indeed, as the caller to the radio show suggested, in a position to turn things around. But there's nothing better, Troy West, you know this, than legitimate inside information.
No doubt.
Curious
No doubt.
what the strongest piece of inside information that you ever received? I don't know if you want to reveal it here on Bury Your Bookie, but we've had a couple of incidents involving not only our own individual efforts, but those of others. There are always great stories out there where inside information came very much into focus, and what was a worthwhile thing to respond to. Have you ever, found out a piece of information, a guy who's not playing, or this, that, or the other thing? Where you said, okay, I'm willing to invest every dime that I have that I can get my hands on, that this is going to turn out to be true.
Yeah, won't go as far as that, but I have been involved in several situations where you get the tip off that several guys were deathly sick, but still might play, may not play. There's been situations where in college basketball, injury stuff that really never got out to Vegas. Where if you knew the injury wasn't like a first degree sprained ankle, this was real stuff, right? But to go, like you said last night with the Kraken, it's like, gosh, these are still professional athletes making millions of dollars. So you got to wonder, at what point. But a perfect example, I'll give you an example the other night, and I was on the wrong side of it, was the Philadelphia 76ers. I
Yes.
mean, the 76ers the other night, I think they were -3 and they lose by 30 plus points, and I think it was to the Nets. I'm going to double check that right now, but I could not believe my eyes going, wait a minute. And now you got Paul George blowing up at the team. I don't think that necessarily means they're going to lose, and you go to the window and bet your entire bankroll. But boy, they lost to the Bulls 142 to
Yes.
110 at home, 142 110. And I'm like going, holy crap. I mean, this is a team that's got Maxi, Umbre, Paul George, Joel Embiid. I mean, how do you lose by 32 points at home unless you're truly walking into that arena and going, I don't give a fuck. Whatever happens, happens, right?
Well,
So I've
Embiid's
got
knees.
countless
Yeah,
stories, but
I was going to say Embiid's
nothing.
knees are in worse shape than Jim Otto, the former center, legendary, documented whenever they were doing something about injuries and debilitating injuries in the National Football League, and how the NFL, especially at the time, had kind of a James Woods in any given Sunday approach where they just ignored it and shrugged their shoulders. Said, oh, no, none of that was due to his football play. But being in need of surgery after the season, somehow is still playing. And you would think the 76ers at this point would turn off the lights there. The Flowers are in the punch and
Incredible.
just go into complete tank mode. But for some reason, maybe it's just to confuse bettors that they're out there. I asked Scotty M this yesterday because a friend of mine ran this theory by me on Monday about college basketball, and I know you are a numerologist at heart, and he was telling me that when you have home favorites in college basketball that are in, I guess, like the 5 to 6.5 point range, that the bookies and the line makers are really trying to tempt you to jump on the wrong side and take the home team, and that if you study this over a course of time, and I'm sure there are various betting sites or sites that analyze betting trends and tendencies, that you would be substantially ahead. Is that a number that you look at? Because yeah, the 5.5 to or 5 to 7 point range for home favorites against teams that otherwise shouldn't have much of a shot. Sometimes unranked teams going on the road seems to be a number that's especially prohibitive to those that are inclined to bet the chalk.
Yeah, I think you'd have to really, like you said, I'd be, to back Scotty's data, really look into how consistent it is, right? I do notice that the number seems inflated quite a bit. I mean, I'm looking at it. Today I'll give you an example. Georgetown goes into UConn. UConn's a 13 and a half point favorite. You think to yourself, like, okay, if this game was in Georgetown, would the line only move 5 points? I'm like thinking to myself, no way. I mean, it would have to have moved 7 or 8. So I feel like Vegas is this year more than any other year. They're giving at least 6, 7, 8 points for home court advantage right now. Which, like to your point, are they tempting you to take the home team? I don't know, but it's an interesting theory without a doubt.
Yeah, he's. I mean, this guy's a hardcore degenerate gambler his entire life. Has gotten in any number of jackpots as a result of it, but always manages to wriggle his way out. And he studies his stuff as if he was studying for the bar exam. And he said that this was a trend that he's been cashing on, and it was definitely something to watch. Inside information, I've had one piece that was exceptional, and you couldn't really get down that much money on it. I've talked about it before here on the show, where a friend of mine who was a DJ in Miami calls me frantically while I'm sitting in the sports book at Caesar's Palace before the Super Bowl game that year was about to start. And he says to me, Defo, how much money you got in your pocket right now? And he's going to ask you to bet something for him. I'm always a subscriber to the theory that if you're going to wager, bring your own money. I don't care what it is. Don't be asking people to bet money for you, because usually you've brought the money that you intend to wager with. You didn't think, okay, 7 of my friends are going to call me and my family right before the game and ask me to bet thousands of dollars for them. But he had a guy that was at the rehearsal for the halftime show with Katy Perry. And the first song she did in the rehearsal was a song called Roar. I don't know any Katy Perry songs, but and I certainly didn't at the time. So there was a prop bet at like 7 to 5 what the first song would be in the halftime show, which is kind of an obscure thing to be wagering on. They laughed at me when I went to the window to try and bet it at Caesar's Palace. And sure enough, we were able to get like a couple of $100 on this thing at some obscure offshore book in Barranquilla, Colombia, or wherever it was that we got this bet down, thinking that there was a very little likelihood we get paid. So you know how they do it. I mean, they turn the sound down at halftime in these casinos and sports books because people are re-upping their bets. And so they turn the sound down. I don't know any Katy Perry songs, but she comes out on the back of a lion as she comes out for the Super Bowl halftime show. And I'm thinking either we won this bet or she thinks she's fucking Lafitte Pink Eye, because had to be Roar. And we did cash the bet and we did get paid, which was kind of unusual. And then there are many other stories of that nature. All right, well, what are you zeroing in on at this point in time? I know you've been hitting college basketball. We had a 2-1 day yesterday with Scotty M. He ended up getting touched up a little bit on the Tennessee game against LSU. What are you looking at, Trey West?
I got 3 games in college hoops that I like a lot, and I'll even throw you an NBA game. So I'm gonna give the viewers 4 games today.
Wow, a 4 game.
College hoops, 4 games, feeling good today. I
Right.
love this game. This is a game I'll have my personal money on. Bradley -4.5, 6 p.m. tip off. Bradley, look, they've been a little inconsistent on the road. They're still 22-7. That's a good basketball team. I think they want to have that opportunity to get an outright bid and not have to count on winning the conference tournament. Give me Bradley -4.5 on the road against Valparaiso. It's one of the games I like a lot. I like Penn State. Penn State is getting 6.5 at Indiana. That to me kind of goes to that inflated line, right? I mean, if that game was in Penn State might be favored by 4 or 5 points. They're getting 6.5 on the road at Indiana. I'll take Penn State getting 6.5. Like that
And there's
game.
that number that popped up. I mean, you're talking between 5 and 7 with the home team favored. So you're right there. You're betting into the trend you didn't even know about, Trey West.
Yes, that's true. It's interesting, very interesting. And then I like Ole Miss. Ole Miss is getting 13.5 at Auburn. Ole Miss is a good basketball team. I get it. 25-2, 13-1. Auburn at home, number 1 in the country. But if you're going to give me 13 and a half points, I'll take that all day. And that's again, Ole Miss, a good basketball team, 19-8, and they've been well coached this year. They're athletic. And you're telling me that if they were at home in this game, that they would still be an 8.5 point underdog at home? I don't think so. Give me 13 and a half with Ole Miss tonight against Auburn. I think it'll be a close game. Not necessarily going to say they're going to win, but I think this game's decided by 7 or 8 points. Then we'll head over to the NBA. This is an interesting one. I'm falling for the trap here, Depot. I'm
All right.
falling for the trap. Give me the Pistons plus 4.5 at home against the Boston Celtics. What a great story the Detroit Pistons have been this year. Playing really good basketball, 32 and 26. If the season ended today, they're in the playoffs. They've got Boston. I get it. Boston's Boston, but they're so inconsistent. I'll take the Pistons plus 4.5 at home tonight against Boston. And Pistons right now, they're the sixth spot if they got in. They'd
Yes.
be opening up the playoffs against the New York Knicks. I think that'd be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, and they're only a game out of fourth, I believe, the fourth
Yeah.
spot. This is a remarkable story. So what kind of price would it take to tempt you? And now we know that usually the coach of the year is somebody that either went to the NBA Finals or won the championship. And the winning teams, the teams with a very high winning percentage, are likely to produce that particular accolade for their head coach. But how is JB Bickerstaff takes over from Monty Williams, takes the reins of a team that was 14 and 68 last year? 14 and 68. I think that was the second worst record in Detroit Pistons history. Bickerstaff has them, as you said, at 32 and 26. Cade Cunningham, who you thought, well, geez, I mean, look at how unlucky Detroit is in a
Yeah.
year where they have finally achieved the number one overall pick. There's no real substantial standout there. I mean, Cade Cunningham was considered to be a very good player, but I don't know that you were thinking, holy shit, we got our hands on Wembanyama by lucking out in the draft lottery. How is it? I don't know what the price is on this, but how is JB Bickerstaff not getting serious consideration for Coach of the Year? And no matter who they name, it would be more than justified if it turned out to be him. So would that be worth a little bit of a sniff, in your opinion, if you were going to bet that sort of proposition?
Absolutely. I mean, I think from what I've heard, it could be between him and JJ Redick. And I mean, come on, JJ Redick's coaching several superstars, and
Luka and
the
LeBron.
Lakers are supposed to be there. The Lakers are. I mean, come on. So I'm with you. I think it's worth it. I mean, this team at this point in the season, they are hungry, hungry, hungry. If you watch them play, they play with a lot of effort. I mean, they beat the Clippers the other night, 106-97. Their defense was outstanding. They moved the ball well. Several guys in double figures: Tobias Harris, Jalen Duran, Caleb Cunningham. You've got Tim Hardaway Jr. This is just a good, fun roster. They're fun to watch. They're physical. A lot of good players. So no, I think that's a great bet right now.
All right. I don't know what the price would be on that. I would imagine what if you were getting somewhere around 8 to 1. Would that be enough to make you think that it'd be worth maybe putting a couple of sticks on that as a prop bet? But anybody that could orchestrate and execute this kind of turnaround, and I'm not sure. I mean, I didn't see anything of great significance in terms of roster shakeup. We know that Cade Cunningham has continued to blossom. He was showing these kind of signs even last year, but uh, who could have anticipated a 14 and 68 team being 6 games over 500, almost 60 games into the season? Pretty remarkable accomplishment. And as you said, I would favor Bickerstaff for that award over J.J. Redick because J.J. Redick had LeBron and Anthony Davis. And when he lost Anthony Davis, guess who he picks up? Oh, Luka, who seems to be rounding into form right now after a couple of stiff games. I know you capitalized on that, too. You weren't necessarily among the legions of Luca followers who thought he was going to go off on his very first game as a Laker. Now,
Yeah.
you may have had to kind of temper your enthusiasm, curb your enthusiasm for that right now. He only had 19 and a triple double last night, but you had to think that he was probably going to shine
Yeah.
against a team that would rather seen him at Weight Watchers than at practice. As the Dallas Mavericks kept alluding to the idea that he was radically out of shape all the time, and that's why he was injured. And that was one of the reasons they didn't want to pay him the substantial amount of money it would take to keep him around for the rest of his career. All right, I had another guy, and I was talking about this yesterday on a show with Scotty M. A good friend of mine. I go on the radio with him probably about once a week, and he knows that we have a relationship, however casual it is, but more than at least a little bit of a personal relationship with the great Rick Pitino, who we have nothing but respect for. And a lot of people don't care for Patino because it looked like he was lying through his teeth when he said he knew nothing about what was going on in the dormitories there. They were essentially opening up a strip club in the athletic dorm, and he claimed,
Hmm.
I know nothing about it. Now, college. You talk to college basketball coaches there in the Seattle area, and probably on many other occasions. They are so detail oriented that they remember everything, every period and comma that took place in their career. That they can cite you chapter and verse. So it's hard to think that Pitino could have been unaware of what was going on with these recruiting atrocities that were taking place at Louisville. But that being said, everywhere he's gone, he's had success. And I was being prodded by this gentleman who also got to meet Patino when he came to our studio for an interview, and couldn't have been any more impressed with what a personable guy he was. That St. John's at 30-1 what was worth a play to win the national championship. Now, as much as I like Patino, I don't know that I see St. John's winning at all. 30-1 is certainly an enticing price on any team if you think they have a chance. Have you formulated any opinions yet about the national championship chase as we're on the precipice of getting involved in March Madness?
Yeah, I mean, Houston, we talked about them last week. Their odds have now dropped substantially. I think St. John's is a fun story. That team, I think they're capable. I mean, right now, I've seen a lot of people that it's an interesting stat. Minus 150, you can take the field versus Duke or Auburn. That's how confident they are with Duke or Auburn right now. And a lot of people will say they'll take Duke or Auburn. I personally would probably take the field. I think both those teams are capable of losing on any given night, and we've seen them lose throughout the course of the year. But um, the discrepancy with those two teams right now is huge, according to the odds makers in Las Vegas. But still, I think, like you said, I like teams like Houston, St. John's, Gonzaga, St. Mary's. These are teams I think can make some deep runs, and as long as a little bit of luck happens and a Duke gets knocked out early, or we see that big Cinderella upset, I got to see the bracket first before I make some official calls. I think it's going to be how certain teams line up and at certain matchups. But St. John's has been an unbelievable story.
How much animosity is there among guys in your area of the country, Seattle, of course, big Gonzaga fans, towards St. Mary's, which appears to be a better team than Gonzaga this year, and yet is rarely mentioned given consideration for the type of lofty achievement it would take to make the Final Four. And here you are, you're touting Gonzaga, but St. Mary's, I haven't heard you mention them. Is there a lot of acrimony among fans there? I mean, do they despise St. Mary's just because of the fact that they have this intense rivalry with Gonzaga?
Well, I'll be the first to say I'm definitely not a Gonzaga fan, so I want to come on record to say that
Okay,
I'm not a
all right.
Gonzaga. Quite the opposite, actually. They're the Huskies, which is my alma mater, is a big rival to Gonzaga. But St. Mary's, I think what's happened with them is year after year, they're not flashy, right? They play very, very good defense. I mean, my God, go look at their box scores and your jaw will drop. But this is a really good team, 25-4 this year. They just won at Gonzaga by 7. I mean, this, like you said, no, this St. Mary's team, this is a team. Watch out for them in the tournament. I think this is the best team they've had in a long, long time. I'm looking forward to watching them in the tournament because they play as good as defense as anybody in the country. It's a really good basketball team.
Do you know anybody that's betting spring training baseball? I think we talked about this maybe a little bit last week. And what would your inclination be in terms of recommending that they be Baker acted? Or are you a believer that there are things that you can decipher about spring training baseball that may give the better a slight winning advantage? Because I don't see it. I mean, it just looks like complete chaos to me.
Well, like you said earlier, if you have the inside information, then then
Yeah.
maybe, right. You better have the tip off. Like you said, if you know a starting pitcher is going to go deep into a game, or if you have an inkling on which bullpen guys might go, then you're on to something. But overall, no, I'm with you. That's a big stay away. You just see over and over and over games are going, holy crap. Some games are 14-8, some games are 2-0. So definitely a big stay away from me.
Are you looking at anything in terms of season totals?
I hate to come out biased, but I do. I love this Seattle Mariner team this year. I really, really do. This pitching staff's outstanding. The bullpen's good, and the hitting was so atrocious last year. I saw an interesting stat. A guy on the radio goes, he's never seen this before with every team in baseball. Their projected starting lineup on opening day is the exact same projected starting lineup the year prior.
Wow.
When do you see that? You never see that, which isn't necessarily a good thing. This is a team that rated in the 30s in almost every category last year. But you expect a lot of guys to bounce back, and their pitching staff's outstanding. I like them a lot. The Boston Red Sox this year, that roster looks really, really good. I think you're betting team total overs with them every night. That lineup is going to be fantastic. A lot of fun to watch. They're going to score a lot of runs this year. So I'm really looking forward to them. AL East and just in general. I've heard interesting things about your Rays. I've heard they've got another good young roster. The Orioles are going to be good again this year. Well, obviously, you got the Yankees. It's going to be a very fun baseball season. But firsthand, I'm liking the Red Sox and they're over, and the Mariners and they're over.
All right, excellent. We'll get more into that as the season approaches, but it's right around the corner here, which is always a great time. There's always that big argument. Well, what's the best time of the year in sports? Is it the fall or the spring? Where you have baseball starting up, and of course NBA and NHL championship runs taking place, and Kentucky derbies, and all kinds of great stuff happening. I probably have to go with the fall with the advent of football, college and pro, because it seems like those two sports have dominated, especially in the hearts and minds of those that are faithfully wagering every night on places like Bet Online. All right, how do people get involved with your service, Troy? Because you're giving out winners every single night.
Yeah, get to the website, troywins.com. We've got several different package options for you there. Or get to the Instagram, it's Troy West. We give out lots of free plays. We do contests, all sorts of good stuff. We're a one-stop shop. We're very affordable. That's troywins.com. No upsells, no BS. We really like to help you guys out. We cover absolutely everything. We cover the UFC, which we had a great time last weekend here in Seattle. They put on a hell of a show. That was a lot of fun. Default, I'll have to send you some videos on that. But that's troywins.com. Not just me, several other handicappers putting their brains together to get you guys the best product possible at the best price.
And you are saturating social media with this stuff. I think it's absolutely outstanding, and you do a great job. I find myself watching your videos all the time. I get them on Facebook and Instagram, and always a pleasure to see friends of yours going out there and knocking down doors and barriers and coming up with winning picks all the time on a consistent basis. Troy, we love you, man. Thanks for getting up so early for us out there in Seattle, Washington. Hope everything is okay and that you continue to prosper. And thanks, as always, for being with us on today's edition of Bury Your Bookie.
Appreciate it, Defoe. Talk to you guys soon.
All right, the great Troy West, ladies and gentlemen. And tomorrow we'll feature Mike Jones on the program, and Friday the professor, who's been on a run on college basketball. So he's been outstanding, redeeming himself from what was a very feeble effort, at least in terms of picks on this show, on college football. Now, the good thing about that, you can be losing the majority of your bets, but if you're putting your money in the right place, if you're not betting the same amount on every game, the professor, and I can attest to this, came out of the season slightly ahead for himself, even though the record was somewhat upside down, which was highly uncharacteristic. But he's killing it in college basketball, so you'll want to join us on Friday. Also has the big board, which is a special feature on Bury Your Bookie on those days. So a lot to look forward to the rest of the week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. For Troy West, I'm Jeff DeForest, the people at Bet Online, NoFilter.net, and Greenlight Ventures. We'll see you tomorrow on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.